You got something else?
Wait.
Okay,
Before
wait.
Aditi
I'm
gets
going to
the
start with
Super
the
Bowl.
story.
Yeah, Aditi, you
Okay,
gotta do
so
the story.
we'll start with the story because I have beef to pick with all of you people.
Uh-oh.
You people.
What
You
people?
people are.
Not me.
boy.
Okay.
I'm starting to get
Yeah,
cold sweats.
Wow.
Yeah, no, Mikey's from Jersey, so it's not him. I mean, it's not
Whoa,
really.
you're
It's
turning
not
mine
the
up there,
so-
Jason.
Oh, sorry.
Turn it back now, please.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
Is it
Go ahead.
down?
All right.
Yeah.
So I was in Arizona. I had the privilege of flying home late Saturday night so that on Sunday I could throw a Super Bowl party. And because I'm the most amazing mommy in the world, I come home with a whole variety of Super Bowl hats, right? Like these are I've got every single version for both teams. So we start Super Bowl Sunday and I say to the kids, okay, call your shot now. Pick your team. So my son, early in the morning, picks that he's going to go with this team. Okay, awesome. Great job. My daughter says, where's my Browns hat? Where's my Browns hat? And Nico has to explain to her, the Browns are not in the game today. She has a freaking meltdown until she gets her Browns hat. Photo, please, Mikey.
Wow.
Wow, let's go.
Goodness.
What do you people do with your brainwashing? What do you put in the water in that city? Like,
It's the
why?
Kool-Aid. Yeah, it's the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Oh, could she be any cuter, Aditi?
She
oh,
drank
my
that
goodness.
Kool-Aid. It's over. And
Oh.
she just tackled your
Why
son.
do you do
Yeah,
this?
Didi, we gotta work on your son's toughness here.
What do you want him to do? Hit his sister?
I think he's being nice. Like, I
Yes.
think he's been yelled at so much by mommy about not, being too rough with his little sister. But of course, the kid was born in Cleveland. The little girl was born in Cleveland. So therefore, she must have some edge to her. I don't understand what it is about Cleveland and the water in Cleveland that once you commit, you commit.
know.
And that is that.
Well, it's changed now. The water's now poisoned from the train derailment. So.
Yeah, so hopefully that will wash out any of our Browns.
Yeah,
Because
well.
you're right. It's really interesting. Like, the Redskins, or now the Commanders, they've sucked here for not nearly as long as the Browns have. But it's funny. I have friends that are lifelong Washington fans, and they're not as caught up in all this now. They're like, yeah, they're easy to turn off because Dan Snyder's a jerk. And I'm like, yeah, but our team is too, and we can't turn it off.
Nope.
And Washington, I always thought they had the greatest fans ever. Their waiting list once upon a time was like 80,000 long. Jeez. But in Washington they can turn it off, but here we're hypnotized. It is like we're hypnotized. We're all in a trance.
Can't do nothing with it.
And that's exactly what my point is. Like, and I'm not breeding any of this. Like, I'm not sitting here saying you have to be this, you need to do this. I'm just a passive observer.
Well, she was born here,
she got
right?
it in her head.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's one of the first things she learned. I was born in Cleveland. I'm a Browns fan. Period.
Wow.
And
Bless
it's
her heart.
just
That poor thing.
insanity.
How bitter is your husband about this, by the way?
Well, haven't you talked to him about this? Like, he's devastated.
Yeah,
he's
I know, he don't like it.
heartbroken.
Yeah.
Poor man sat on the Steelers season ticket wait list for 21 years just to be able to get into Steelers games, and he's got a Bills fan and a Browns fan. I mean,
Wow.
Oh, that poor guy. Well, Aditi, my
not that I
granddaughter,
don't think it's funny or anything.
my daughter went and married a Steelers fan. So go figure that.
Oh, wow. That's a failure on your part.
It is. Bad job by me. But here's the thing.
But
so
you know who I met? Well, no, really quickly, Jay. So on my flight out to Arizona, I met the Cleveland Browns Fan of the Year. You know, this year they named a Fan of the Year for every single club, and they flew them out. So I met the Fan of the Year, Tim. He is the most classy, wonderful gentleman that you could meet. A condition of his marriage to his brilliant, beautiful wife, Kim, was that she converted from Steelers fandom to Browns fandom.
Wow.
He would
Do you have
not
to take
marry
classes
her
for that?
until she took oath to
There's a
to
course.
the Browns.
It's
Yeah, apparently.
It's like
I mean,
becoming
I guess, like,
Catholic.
forget converting from
Some
Judaism
holy
or
water.
Catholicism or something like that. This is a bigger deal.
Well, I told my son-in-law when he asked permission to marry my daughter, I said, that's good, but we're going to have to come to some sort of an agreement about how you and my daughter are going to raise my grandchildren. Because I can have family, because my sister also married a Steelers fan. So I can have family that's married in that are Steelers fans, but I don't know how I would interact with blood family if they ever rooted for Pittsburgh. So after the first year of her life, when they made the playoffs, I said, Joe, this is a good thing. The Browns are turning the corner. The Steelers have been at the top end of the talent cycle forever, so it's their turn to stink. So we're going to raise her a Browns fan. But after the last 2 years,
they both.
I don't know that I want to do that to her. I really don't. So now I might
It
just
builds
acquiesce.
character to root for a bad team.
Yeah, bullshit.
Jay, I have some advice
you
for
know
you
what?
on that.
It really does, and I think it teaches you perspective in a lot of ways. And
Yes.
I'll be honest, when I was growing up, I hate saying this because it totally ages me, but when I was in elementary school in the 1980s, in the late 80s, the Mets were amazing, and the Yankees were the ones that sucked.
Yeah.
And everybody I went to school with was a Mets fan. They loved Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden and Greg
Gary
Jeffries and
Carter.
all that, right? Yeah.
Keith
and
Hernandez.
the Yankees were. Who were the Yankees? The Yankees were Don Mattingly and nobody. Ricky Henderson. But
They were mediocre.
I think that made me appreciate when the winning finally happened. It
but
gave me good
you
perspective.
haven't really suffered as a Yankee fan. Stop it. Come on now.
I'm not,
The Yankees were.
That's
the
like
Yankees.
the last 20 years of my life, not before then.
Aditi.
And now
since-
I don't care. Like the last
since
20
the-
years, who cares?
Since the
It's the
50s, the
early
Yankees
years
have been
of
bad
performance.
for 8 years. I mean, come on. There's no suffering there.
Speaking of the Yankees, did
Well,
you guys
I
see
think
it?
it's the formative years. I think it's your early years that really
Yeah.
form you, right? So, like, everybody thinks it's, oh, yeah, sure, my son is a Fairweather fan because he loves the Bills. But you know what? When he decided he loved the Bills, he was 2 years old,
Right.
and they were a mess.
Yeah, but
It's
the
when
Yankees,
they drafted Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds.
being
Go ahead.
a Yankee fan during those, 4 bad years is not like being a Browns fan or a Cubs fan where you suffered your entire life until
Sure.
you finally hope they
I can
have
do
some
that.
success. And by the way, my sister and when my mother got remarried when I was an adult, both married Yankee fans, but they would both root for the Cubs if the Cubs played the Yankees in the World Series.
Well, then they're not Yankee fans.
Really?
No, their husbands are Yankee. I'm saying my sister and my mother would still root for the Cubs.
Oh, I thought you were saying the men they married
no, they
would
wouldn't.
Yeah, well, you
suddenly
should-
switch.
No.
I mean,
married-
you shouldn't have to give up your allegiance. But Jay, this is actually interesting. As you're watching the Chiefs and the Eagles on Sunday,
Yeah.
how far away do you feel the Browns are? Like when you look at what those two teams did offensively,
Yeah.
do you feel like
Well,
You're close?
We were discussing this while we were all watching it. I don't think we're close. I think we're further away than we are close, if that makes sense. So if there's a bottom and they're the top, I think we're closer to the bottom than we are to the
Sure.
top. And
Again, that's
you know,
true. As of today, I would agree with you.
Right.
It's going to all come down to, I hate to be a broken record, but what does Deshaun Watson look like next year? Because if Deshaun Watson is anywhere close to the player he was for the past 6 games, the Browns are screwed for the next bunch of years. They will be mediocre at best for a long time and have no options. If he's back to being the player he was in Houston, then I think they'll be closer to the top than to the bottom. However, you have 5 teams right now in Philly, Buffalo, Kansas City, San Francisco, and Cincinnati that are clearly in a class on top that everybody else is trying to make headway on. And it's not just one team, it's 5. And I would argue that maybe even San Francisco's not on that list until we know for sure about their quarterback.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Yes, that's what I'm seizing on. The
Yeah.
4 teams have absolutely elite quarterbacks who raise the level of everybody around them. But that 5th, San Francisco, you're saying that because of the way the entire club is constructed.
Yeah, but I think
So,
they're 5th out of 5.
I've already said this too. I'm on the record saying this, that Deshaun Watson needs to be a top 5 quarterback. For what the Browns gave up for him and the
Yes.
amount of money that they are
No
paying
question.
him, he needs to be in that Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts category, if we're putting Jalen Hurts in there. He better be up there. But when you look at the rest of the team, when you look at tight end play, Dallas Goedert and Travis Kelce, when you look at those 2 offensive lines, what the Kansas City's rebuilt offensive line and what that Eagles line is, when you look at the running backs, when you look at the receivers, when you're looking at Smith and A.J. Brown, when you're looking, I mean, the Chiefs didn't have as much sizzle, but still those guys caught the ball and did what they needed to do. When you look at the rest of the roster, what are you thinking?
I mean,
Close or still not close?
I don't know. Well, I mean, last year everybody said they were close. They were close. They were so more talented, so much. And then I've been saying I think we overrated their talent, and everybody disagreed with me. But listen, the Browns are better at running back than both of those teams. I think David Njoku is not really far behind Dallas Goedert personally. He's obviously far behind Travis Kelce, but so is every other tight end besides maybe Andrews and Kittle when they're healthy. Offensive line, I mean, I don't think the Browns' offensive line is really that far behind those teams. The Browns 2 years ago had the number one graded offensive line in the league, and they had some injuries this year. We'll see where they are. So, I think wide receiver, they're off from Philly, but Amari Cooper's better than any of the wide receivers on Kansas City. Right? I mean, who's better? Juju Smith-Schuster.
I mean, I give you that one.
So I don't think they're
sure.
that far behind. The question is Deshaun Watson that far behind? If he is, there's no chance. The play calling.
Coaching.
Right?
We have not mentioned coaching.
Coaching.
These coaches coach their tail off. Andy Reid coaches his tail off with no receivers.
You know what? We'll see. The Eagles coach has done it for 1 year. We got to see it more than 1 year.
Yeah, but specifically the Chiefs, everybody's behind
Kevin
Andy
Stefanski
Reid.
won Rookie of the Kevin Stefanski was Coach of the Year his first year. We all thought he was a genius. So we might, and Nick Sirianni could be fired in 4 years. So who knows?
We can see that.
But I think, but to G's point, you see the creativity, and in Pittsburgh, that was kind of trending. So on Super Bowl Sunday, Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator, is trending, and you're like, why? It's because every Steelers fan is saying, watch what Kansas City is doing on offense, watch what the Eagles are doing on offense, and it's almost like take out the puzzle pieces. Like, who cares who's running it? But just watch what they're doing.
That's what we said.
And the Steelers don't do anything even remotely like
Aditi,
that.
in fairness, I hate to defend the Steelers, and I don't think Matt Canada is a very good offensive coordinator. But those teams have Patrick Mahomes. But those teams have Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. The Steelers had Mitch Trubisky, who most of the national media, I might have gotten it wrong that the Steelers were under 500, but I said Trubisky was a joke and a bad hire, and everybody said, oh, he learned under the Bills. He's going to be great. He sucked. He was the same trash he was when he was in Chicago. And you had no quarterback, so it's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
You can run routes. You can run the routes without having the quarterback. If they were running all kind of creativity and the quarterback just couldn't get him the ball, fine. But we don't see anything like this from these other guys. We just don't see it.
You can't point to two plays. Obviously, Andy Reid is a better offensive mind than any of these other coaches. I get it. But the quarterback does matter. It's a huge difference. More important than the coach. There's nothing more important than the quarterback. And those Steelers didn't have a quarterback, and the Browns didn't either. Now, we expected Watson to be a quarterback. He wasn't. He was terrible. And hopefully he won't be next year. But if he's terrible, no matter how creative the play calling is, the Browns still won't be that good offensively.
And sort of to that point, Aditi, Garrett, we were watching the game together. Jay, Garrett, and I were watching the Super Bowl together. And,
Thanks.
And Garrett and Mike and Steve, Director Steve.
There you go.
And I wasn't invited. Thanks.
As soon as I started.
Whoa.
Hold
yes,
on.
you were, Aditi.
Yes,
Don't
you
you dare
were.
say I didn't invite you.
You were.
Yeah.
Of all the RSVP
The
knows.
invitation had to come from the person who was actually hosting, not somebody else.
Listen,
No, Mike
when the person that was hosting learns to tie his shoes, he'll then learn how to send out Evites. In the meantime, of all the RSVP no's that I got, yours was the only one I shed tears over.
To be honest, Aditi did reject us very nicely. Can I read the text, Aditi?
You never
Do you
told me
mind?
this.
Oh my God.
Aw, that's so
All
very
right,
kind
go
of
ahead.
him. And for you to pass this on. I doubt we'll drive there that weekend, but thank you. You never know with 2 exclamation points.
That's like getting let
2 exclamation
That's
points.
like going. You ask a girl on a date. Oh, that was nice.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
We got
I
friend
asked-
zoned so hard there, Jay.
I know we did.
Friend zone.
We did, big time. Aw, that is so cute. Wait until I tell my friends. They're going to think that is so adorable.
Anyway, back to the point I was trying to make.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody else shut up.
G asked me during the game, like, could Deshaun run this playbook? Watching Kansas City, I'm like, yeah, why not? With a full offseason, with a full set of OTAs, with Kevin and Deshaun working together, why couldn't they run that playbook?
Okay, but this goes back, Jason. Remember the story with Nick Sirianni. He came in as a head coach and wanted to call the plays. He thought that it gave him some level of authority. He thought it gave him some level of credibility. A few weeks in, he realized, I need to coach the entire team. I need to be available to every single position group whenever is necessary. His ego did not get in the way. He gave up the play calling duties, which he loved doing. He personally loved doing, but he thought the best thing for the club was to give Shane Steichen the play calling duties. And look at where we are today.
Yeah,
in
lost, and the head coach that calls his plays, Andy Reid, won.
Yeah, well,
who is a genius? Yes, but can we already establish that Andy Reid is one of the top, two offensive minds in the history of the game?
The two Super Bowl coaches from last year both call their plays.
Yeah, but hold on. Andy Reid doesn't call the plays.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't. Darren asked him the question, and he said 52%.
They lie to the media.
Oh,
don't you see him on the sideline
No.
But
this is what even Andy Reid is saying. Look, Eric Bieniemy is getting all of the attention right now this week, rightly so, for pointing out the way the Chiefs could the way the Chiefs could exploit what the Eagles were doing defensively, seizing on something that Doug Peterson and the Jaguars did in a game that, by the way, I was on the sideline for. And even Andy Reid is saying now that perhaps the best thing for Eric Bieniemy to do is go off to another job where he very actively, like in Washington,
call the plays.
Is calling the plays, and no one is questioning that he's calling the plays the way that you're questioning whether he's calling the plays or not.
Right. I mean, Andy came out and said, I don't know why he would lie about that.
I think that we give Andy a lot of credit. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it was just, why would Andy lie about who's calling the plays? He was asked point blank.
Well, then why every time we talk about the Chiefs, you guys say Andy Reid's the best offensive coach if he's not calling the plays?
Because he's done it for a long time.
Because he's designing things.
Yeah.
Because there's two parts to it. You are looking at what's out there. You're designing things. You're creating things. You're suggesting things, which everyone said this week. Eric Bieniemy does too. But then there's also in the moment. Okay, what's the best thing to dial up here? There's two parts to being the coordinator, the play caller, the mastermind, the architect. Why do so many teams have a pass game coordinator, a run game coordinator, an offensive coordinator? There's a piece of deciding what to do, but then there's also in the moment deciding this is what we're going to right in this moment.
And
that's what Andy Reid does.
And I just disagree. I think there's 100 different ways to do it, and there's no one right way. Kyle Shanahan has nothing to do with the 49ers defensively. Nothing. So there's
two teams in the Super Bowl last year.
But he recognizes talent. Sure, he recognizes talent on that side of the ball, don't you think?
Does he recognize? But he has nothing to do with the game day operations defensively. Kyle's totally focused on the offense side of the ball. He's not the only one. There's a bunch of them like that. I just think there's a bunch of different ways to get there. I don't think there's just one road you have to take, and it has to be the head coach can't call the plays.
Also, sure, but Jason, shouldn't we also say that you may write better on deadline. You may write a better game story than I can ever hope to write. I may write a much better lengthy enterprise story. Who knows, right? Like, everybody has different skills. Just because Kyle Shanahan can do it on game day, Kyle Shanahan is the offensive architect who comes up with crazy creative things that nobody else does, doesn't mean that person X or person Y or person Z is the same exact thing. I'm just saying, if you're questioning the offensive creativity 3 years in, then maybe there needs to be an injection of something different. Maybe there doesn't. Maybe it was just there was no one to execute that offensive creativity.
I think if the Browns fall on the onside kick against the Jets, if David Njoku catches a touchdown in the end zone that hits him right in the freaking hands against the Saints, we're having a completely different conversation about where the Browns
you can say
are.
that about 20 other teams.
Absolutely,
probably.
you can. The margin is always this. But I'm just saying, a lot of times it's just all doom and gloom, and Kevin should give her the play calling, and the Browns suck, and they're not that close. And I agree with, like we talked about 19th, that's probably about where they should be. But I just think they are right there in about 3 or 4 different games, and we're having a completely different conversation where everyone is so excited and saying, oh, my God, look at the creativity and look at how close they are.
You give it one more year and you see.
Yeah.
He lost a lot of his cachet when he let Joe Woods hang around. He hung around, and it was costing them games. And you just sat here and you said week after week after week, what are we going to do? Are we going to change anything?
I agree Joe Woods should have been fired. but who's the defensive coordinator if you fire him after week 4?
I don't know.
Who's your
And the
DC?
crazy thing is, the
but you
defense
have to
did
know.
get better.
You have to have
again.
an answer. You have to know.
If I say it ain't gonna be no worse than what Joe Woods is, now I would have a hard time putting the guy in charge who said they couldn't guard the
Jeff
Bengals.
Howard.
Yeah.
No, he
Trent
just took
Irwin.
No,
He just left.
it was
Jeff
Howard.
Howard.
He took a job. He
just got a job.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah.
All right, but let's spin it forward, Aditi. When you look at the Browns, we've talked about this a lot. Obviously, they need to upgrade at both wide receiver and defensive tackle. Those are their 2 biggest areas of need. They're I assume, going to address both of those areas this offseason. But if you had to decide which one is more important to this team, which do you think it is?
Defensive tackle.
Okay.
You have
with
to
you.
stop the run. In
I'm
this
with you.
division, you have to stop the run, period. I mean, think about everything, even offensively. If you want the ball, you have to make sure that you're stopping the other team to get the ball. I mean, it's just, in this division, you have to stop the run, period. And it just sets off everything. If you get a game changer there, if you get someone that can help generate turnovers, can help free up the other. It's just, I don't need to say anything more. That's it, period.
Aditi, my point has been, I don't need elite at defensive tackle. Just give me league average. Bring Larry Ogunjobi back. That's all. Like, do they really need elite defensive tackle with Myles Garrett there? Or can league average get by with then to be able to address another edge rusher? Give me another receiver or 2.
I mean,
just give me league average up the middle.
Sure, but if you get elite, then suddenly that becomes one of the best units in the NFL. Suddenly that becomes a unit that really does indeed affect the game.
The problem
then it becomes, okay, our defense drives things.
Give us something better than the worst that we've ever seen.
Yes.
Right.
The problem is, Aditi, you're right. I would like to see them have it. You can't get 2. Like, the idea of having 2 elite defensive tackles is not realistic.
I don't know how you find elite defensive tackles.
It's
unless
hard.
through the draft.
Sometimes they develop, right? Sometimes they develop. The problem for the Browns has been that their ability under this regime to they have failed at either or both to recognize talent, certainly in the front 7 on defense, and to develop that talent. They've either gotten one or both of those things wrong because they have 0 talent besides Myles Garrett in the front 7. 0. Everybody else in the front 7 stinks.
Don't you feel like Winfrey is just young and raw, and Winfrey does indeed have potential? And that with some development. The one thing I would say is that defensive tackles sometimes do take a period of time. You think about, we were watching the Eagles on Sunday, and Javon Hargrave, I knew as a rookie in Pittsburgh, he was drafted by the Steelers, and he was a good player in Pittsburgh. He wasn't the player that he is in Philadelphia. Is part of that development? Yes. Is part of that opportunity? Yes. But part of that is also time. Whereas a wide receiver can come in and step in and have a significant impact in year 1, often defensive tackles take a little bit more time. So there's something to be said for that.
That is
but
definitely fair. And we've got a lot of young ones.
Carry on, it's a maturity issue. He's got to grow up.
Yes, and when we look at the Eagles this year, there was significant conversation. There were still questions about Jalen Hurts, so much so that even after this game, Patrick Mahomes said the questions about Hurts should stop now. But it was that defense and that run game that were driving the Eagles for much of the year. Look at the number of sacks they had. Look at the proportion of run to pass. The way that the Eagles were playing, they were playing old school football to get to the point of where they were. So that's where I would argue a defensive tackle is worth it. You don't just want adequate. You want someone who helps set Myles Garrett up to be the single best defensive player in the league. That happens when you've got an elite guy next to you, too.
Yeah, interestingly, the 4 teams that have made the Super Bowl over the last 2 years all had a top 10 defensive tackle. And I'm Mr. Offense wins, and I believe offense wins now. But you look at it, last year you had Aaron Donald and DJ Reader.
Who won the game?
Aaron Donald did win the game.
Right.
Aaron Donald won that
Made
game
the
for
playoffs.
them last year.
And then this year you had Chris Jones and, they got 2. The Eagles got multiple defensive tackles that are really good players. So that is important.
I can say there was all those teams got receivers too.
Well, no. I'm not saying they won necessarily because of that. I'm just saying it's interesting that all 4 have a
Your point being,
top
it's
defensive tackle.
difficult to be at the top of the NFL heap if you don't have someone really
I don't
good
even know
in
if
the
that's
middle.
my point. I'm just, I don't
It's
know
an
if that's
observation.
it's
an observation, and it
really.
is only 2 years.
Yeah.
But you know what?
It's
I bet
my
if you-
point.
If you
Yeah.
played that exercise and you went back, you'd probably find that over the last 10 years in the 20 teams that played, 16 of them probably had that really above average defensive tackle.
I know none of those 4
Look, the
teams
Chiefs
had
had
an elite
to-
running back.
the
I'll tell you that. None of them had
The
an elite
Chiefs
running
had
back.
to rebuild. The Chiefs build their offensive line because of what the Bucs defensive front did to the Chiefs. So we could keep going back if we called it all up, and I bet, Adam, it goes far further than that.
Yeah. By the way, Aditi, one thing. I do think it's not unfair to say Jalen Hurts has got to prove it one more year. 1 year is not he wasn't last year, he wasn't that good. He was okay. He's got to be, to me, you're not elite until you've done it at least 2 years. He's got to prove it a second year. To me, he's not. First of all, Patrick Mahomes is in a class by himself. And then you have Burrow and a couple other guys, Allen. But you've got to play at that level for at least 2 years before you get in that group. To me, I didn't even, as much as I love Burrow, I didn't put him in there until after this year because he played at elite level 2 years in a row. I think you got to.
He's obviously part of it. Consistency is a huge.
Yeah.
Jalen's life is a good. Had 5 different college, 2 years in a row. That's the first time he's had the same coordinator in consecutive years since he was in high school with his dad. Now he will once again have a different coordinator. And of course, his life is easy. He's got 2 number 1 wide receivers. He's got an elite veteran offensive line. He's got a great run game. Booby Miles Sanders was running phenomenally this year. So yeah, the pieces are in place. And I happen to really like Dallas Goedert. I think that Dallas Goedert is a tight end. I am willing the same category as, if not Travis Kelce, I'm on the mark.
It's too hard to decipher what
I
exactly
might have
she's
lost you
saying.
guys.
Yeah, your signal's
Yeah, we
breaking
lost
up.
you a little bit on that last question. You're freezing up.
Yeah, but we want to thank you for blowing us off for our Super Bowl party. And look at that
Look at her face.
We just froze you in a very funny face. We still love you. Thanks, Aditi. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.